What's good, YouTube? And welcome to the good, the bad, and the ugly with the Retro Pack Rewave set. Let's start with the ugly. This is a retail exclusive, meaning you're not going to see it at your local OTS unless they bought it off the shelf at Walmart or Target, and then they're going to probably be upcharging, which would be unfortunate because that just takes people's chance away at the set at a lower price. Currently, it is at Walmart around MSRP, just a penny more, and they have a limit of 12 on them. I bought 12. I'm sticking to the limit. I'll probably open 10 on a live stream and keep 2 sealed for myself. That's all I'm going with the set. I'm not going any deeper personally. I think it's really cool how it has the classic card layout and looks oh so good. It has a warm reception from the community overall, even the collector community, and it does have the identifying modern copyright update on the bottom for Studio Dice instead of Kazuki Takahashi. Now, GameStop, more of the ugly, is charging above MSRP, $19.99 general and $18.99 if you're a pro. Yeah, pro Yu-Gi-Oh players, right? They exist. You can be a pro over here. But all jokes aside, I do think that the set can be both a cash grab and something really nice, and it hits that sweet spot that Konami kind of is going to cash in on. Now, I will say, with stuff that goes to retail and sells extremely well, it can get rewaved, and there's nothing stating this is going to be the only wave of this unless I've missed something. So, we see the legendary decks at Walmart every couple of years. If this is going to sell out like hotcakes, I could imagine we see this a couple years down the road, or maybe even sooner for a Christmas, depending. They've done it with so many different sets, and we'll talk about those too. So with the Legendary Collection, we saw that the 25th anniversary set would have those updated card layouts. They did give other quarter century secret rares. We're not getting that with this set, but we can see that even these did sell to some degree. But this was far less popular, I feel like, with most people. I don't mind it, but I don't love it. I do think it made some cards look cooler and have that different identification, but instead, the only difference is this down here, which I do think is a bit different than a first edition stamp where people are like, oh, people look at the stamp. Well, look down here. It's different. It's different, right? We're talking about a reprint of something already, and now a reprint of a reprinted version, and getting into reprintception. Legend of Blue Eye's reprint box, though, is doing really well for itself. I remember you could grab these at $70, and it's doubled that now, and it's done just really well over time. In fact, that was towards the lowest you could have got it, as if you went pre-sales, right? When we look at some quality control issues that are happening, a lot of secrets are missing names and still have the imprint. That is the less desirable misprint because you can acetone it off. Although Vintage Yu-Gi-Oh here pulled it on camera. You can't tell him he did that. And in fact, it might be a double misprint, because with how deep that name looks, it might have been double stamped in with no ink application. I'd have to see it in person, but double stamping of a name is also a different kind of misprint in the process that can happen. But his opening's really nice. It also shows, if you want to watch it, I'll link that down below too, some of the differences in the inking of, say, Red Eyes. He brings out a classic and compares them side by side. When it comes down to other ones, though, like this super light, barely noticeable there name imprint, I did talk to the owner. They confirmed that it does have a very light imprint, so there's varying levels of this missing from some of the secret rare pulls. You may pull a normal one, you may pull a misprinted one. I'm one of the weirdos that likes misprints. I've collected them much longer than most people have, where other people this is going to bother into oblivion. Now, I do want to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Tube's discussion here, because he is bringing up that it's not going to crash the set. He does acknowledge some cards might come down in price, and I'm going to disagree long term on the viability, because he talks about the first edition stamp versus that new copyright logo and the differentiation there, right? Well, whenever there is a cheaper version of something that comes out that is still extremely comparable, it tends to wreck the price, no matter how scarce something may seem. Now, a modern print that is, 15 years later plus versus something that's ancient and not going to repopulate as readily, those are two different things. They are apples and oranges, but look what the quarter century century secret rare did to Stardust. It started trying to hold on and it just kept coming down. The demand genuinely lowered versus the quarter century secret rare from the 10, which has also only come down in price for the most part, available at $5, wrecking this $600+ card. Now, there are other factors like rarity collection kind of blew the knees out of the entire high-end market. A lot of people griped and left, went full panic mode, and he says it's not time to panic. I agree to some extent that a lot of those oldies are going to keep some value. They're not going to repopulate as easily, but over time, I do think it drains the power of the Retro Pack Classic set when the cards look so similar and the identifier is not a first edition stamp even, which is revered on a higher level. Some people minimize that. I personally buy into it. The copyright difference, it doesn't do it as much for me as a stamp, and I know other high-end collectors already looking at the new stuff going, I think I'm going to go ahead and get this. I have heard it from several high-ends, so I think there are different points of views that end up playing into a market's future. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't know the future of card prices and how a market will react, and a couple of deep interested pockets could make the stuff that comes back on the market disappear at any point in time. So there's a lot of different possible futures for this set, but I think that the Retro Pack set will have a lot of its value drained out by the new one, in my opinion, personally. They look so good. They really do. I urge you to go ahead and watch an opening on it, but panic mode, not necessarily. I think the repopulation will be slow, but I do think you will find a slow in demand from buyers for the classic as well, while the new one's here. And again, I want to remind you, Konami themselves can rewave this unless they say they're not going to. And I don't hear that kind of communication yet. They did it with, what's another really good one? Oh yeah, the Duelist Pack Kaiba one, as well as Yugi. They got rewaved into several times to where they went to the updated foil ultimate rares, right? The first edition is classic. The Unlim travels to the era where we have new ultis, and the Unlims actually look different than these first edition glams and have the whole different foiled up layout to where it actually causes a huge division between first and Unlim. But also, like, that extra identifier is huge because you're actually looking at a different foiled card. Whereas the Retro Pack cards, they're looking pretty much the same. So when it comes down to things that get rewaved into the ground, their prices can still recover over time. And as this Retro Pack, even if it does get rewaved into the ground, if it eventually stops and is still that popular to have been bought that much, and it raises back up, that does re-raise the ceiling for the classic Retro Pack. We're relatively new in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Collector space. When it comes down to it, it took Blue Eyes being meta less than a decade ago to raise first edition LOB Blue Eyes, shocker, from $65 towards $260, and DDS from like $85 to $120 depending on your timing, all the way to $320. And that's like 2016 or so. So our collector market is super young, less than a decade old, despite us being in the 25th anniversary. Retro Pack was one of the original collectible sets. If you had an entire set of this, it was around, I think when I sold my first ever completed set while I was still vendor man in like 2013, it was $1,000-something. One of my biggest deals for a set of Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So this is a revered set to some degree and a long-lived one. I currently don't have many Retro Pack 1 cards. For LOB format, I am happily going to get Super Logins from the new Retro Pack over this. I love LOB format. It's not as niche as you might think. There's a lot of people who follow that. That's why Battle Ox is one of the more bought out cards of the Kaiba suitcase, not just the anime. So when it comes down to it, again, I feel like there's going to be people, myself included, that go high end that are going to settle for certain things, and that's my argument. I also urge you to hear out the entire argument. Like I said, he does acknowledge that prices can and probably will come down for certain cards, and I agree at the highest end it'll be the strongest and longest to come down, but competition is still going to be there in my opinion. Thanks for watching today's Market Watch-ish on Retro Pack. Like, I know we went over a lot of different prices, but I probably won't title this a Market Watch. It's more of a review early on the set and opinions flying around, and I think there is a lot to be learned from initial discussions versus how they're going to evolve, and I want to put my thoughts out there on it.